A brittle frost clings to the grass outside Eberacum's stone ramparts as the first pale rays of sunlight slip over the horizon. The Ninth Legion's camp, a mix of disciplined geometry and earthy reality, stirs to life beneath the great timber palisades. Soldiers shrug off sleep within their leather tents, the dense reek of damp wool, wood smoke, and last night's boiled barley clinging to every surface. A young legionary named Marcus, barely 2 winters in Britannia, rubs his hands for warmth as he pulls on his mail shirt, the metal rings cold and biting against his skin. Across the way, an old centurion named Gaius, his face marked by years under northern skies, strides between tents, barking the morning orders with the clipped precision of men who have survived too many campaigns. The rhythmic clang of hammered shields and the muffled hooves of the cavalry horses in their stables mingle with the distant sounds of a city still at peace. Vendors lighting lamps in the market, a dog barking, the faint melody of a flute played by a drowsy sentry. In the center of the camp, the Legion's aquilifer kneels, quietly polishing the silvered eagle standard that blazes in the growing light, fingers tracing the embossed wings as if invoking protection from the gods. Nearby, cooks heap baskets of wheat and dried fruit onto a rough wooden table, their chatter in Latin and clipped tongues of Thrace and Gaul a reminder of the Empire's reach. The Legion's physician, carrying a worn leather satchel, pauses to examine a soldier's split knuckles, his hands steady and sure despite the icy morning. For a brief moment, even as rumors of rebellion and restless tribes swirl beyond the walls, the men of the Ninth are simply soldiers, tying sandals, mending cloaks, sharing a cup of watered wine, and laughing at some coarse joke. Yet, in the sharp-edged air of this ordinary dawn, there is a tension that lies beneath every gesture, every glance toward the wild, forested north. The sentries along the ramparts stamp their feet to keep warm, their eyes scanning the mist-shrouded horizon where the unknown waits. Hard men shaped by war, family, and longing, they have no warning that history is about to close over them, erasing names and faces. But in these final, unmarked hours, the Ninth stands ready, living in the quiet spaces before the storm. From the battered stone ramparts of Eberacum, now York, the early morning mist draped the land in a shroud that blurred friend and foe alike. Beneath the city's watchful walls, the ordinary rhythm of daily life was stilled by an undercurrent of anxiety, as rumors swept through the winding streets and tight-knit insulae. Housewives gathered in cramped courtyards, shoulders hunched, voices hushed, trading whispers of villages to the north raised by unseen hands, and of the Roman detachments that never returned from patrol. Blacksmiths hammered anxiously at dented lorica segmentata, their calloused hands moving with the nervous speed of men who suspected they would soon be forging more than plowshares. The city's population, Romans, Britons loyal to Rome, and those who kept their allegiances private, watched with silent dread as soldiers of the Ninth Legion, faces grim beneath iron helmets, assembled in the shadow of the fortress garrison to receive orders, before melting back into the countryside. At dusk, the city's forum became a gathering place for news and nervous speculation, its stone floor echoing the clipped footsteps of centurions reporting to their tribunes, scrolls clenched tightly in ink-stained fists. Inns overflowed with travelers and traders, some fleeing the north, their clothes ragged and mud-spattered, others clinging to the hope that Roman power remained unshaken. But the signs of growing unease were everywhere, in the way sentries peered longer over the palisade, in the extra ration of wine given to men before a night patrol, and in the sudden scarcity of horses, as military requisitions left stables bare. Within the baths, usually a scene of relaxed camaraderie, conversation now fell silent when the door creaked or when a legionary entered with blood on his tunic. Altars to household gods flickered with fresh offerings, honey cakes, coins, even garlands of late-blooming flowers, tokens of desperate pleas for protection. In every corner of Eberacum, the pressure tightened, like the tension in a drawn bowstring, as the Ninth Legion prepared, without fanfare or prophecy, to march northward into territory grown increasingly hostile and unknown. Within the stone-walled confines of Ibarakam's barracks, the footfalls of the Ninth Legion soldiers echoed across the flagstone floors, boots thudding in practiced rhythm as they prepared for an uncertain march north. The air inside the Contubernia, shared sleeping quarters, hung heavy with the mingled scents of oiled leather, damp woolen cloaks, and the pungency of preserved garum rations. Veteran legionaries, faces weathered by campaigns in Germania and Britannia, tightened their baltea around their waists and checked the edges of their gladii by lamplight, murmuring in Latin or for some Gauls and Iberians in their native tongues. A centurion passed between rows of wooden beds, his vine cane tapping against a shield leaned against the wall, barking reminders to stow personal possessions, wax tablets with scribbled letters home, bone dice rattling in cloth pouches, and small wooden figurines of deities or family left behind. Through the open doorways, the sounds of Ibarakam's streets drifted in, the clatter of traders pulling carts of pottery, the laughter of children skipping along the muddy Via Principalis, the cawing of crows perched atop the fortress ramparts. As the gray northern light filtered through narrow windows, legionaries filed out into the stone corridors, their armor clinking softly, passing by the smoke-tinged kitchen where young slaves stirred pots of barley porridge and bakers kneaded loaves for the day's supplies. Outside, the walls of the great fortress loomed over the bustling vicus, where local Britons, some resentful, others eager for trade, watched the column of soldiers assembling, their red-crested helmets gleaming against the bleak sky. In the officers' hall, tribunes gathered around a map unfurled atop a wooden table, tracing the twisting course of the northern roads with ink-stained fingers, while heated debates, punctuated by the clinking of wine cups, revealed their uncertainty about the rumored uprisings beyond Hadrian's future wall. As the chill morning advanced, blacksmiths hammered out final repairs on damaged lorica segmentata, and carpenters loaded wooden crates of javelins onto two-wheeled supply wagons. Horses stamped impatiently in the cobbled streets, their nostrils clouding the air, while priests in white robes offered incense at the camp shrine, praying to Mars and Fortuna for the legion's safe return. All the while, in the shadowed spaces behind closed doors, whispers of dread grew among wives, lovers, and children, uncertain if this departure would bring home glory or loss. It is the waning days of the campaign season, and a cold drizzle sweeps across the bleak, heathered moors north of Eboracum. The Ninth Legion, hardened veterans and raw recruits alike, trudged through sucking mud, their sandals caked and cloaks sodden, as they marched deeper into the wilds of Caledonia. Overhead ravens wheel and call, their cries lost beneath the steady drumming of legionary feet. They push past the last recognizable outposts of Roman civilization, far-flung mile castles and crumbling watchtowers, each man acutely aware of the isolation closing around them. At the forefront rides the legate, his standard bearer at his side, the golden eagle glinting dully through the mist. The scouts, alert and tense, disappear into the haze, returning with hurried signals. Movement in the forests, the glint of painted shields, shadows flitting behind ancient oaks. In the rear, pack animals groan under burdens of grain and spare weapons, watched by sweating slaves and scowling auxiliaries. The legion's march halts abruptly at the edge of a dense wood, the tree line dark and impenetrable, thick with bracken and mists that seem to swallow whole the sound and light of day. An uneasy silence settles as centurions bark orders and men unfasten scabbards, steeling themselves for contact with an unseen enemy. The first volley comes not with a shouted challenge, but with a hail of javelins arcing from the undergrowth, their iron tips hissing through the air. Shields clatter as the front ranks raise their scuda, and the familiar order to form testudo echoes through the ranks. Yet the attack is relentless and coordinated, the enemy unseen but lethal, their war cries reverberating through the trees. Desperation mounts as the legionaries realize they are encircled, the ground beneath them becoming a quagmire of churned mud and blood. The discipline that once defined them now serves as a grim anchor as men fight back to back, the legion's precious eagle always at the center, a rallying point amidst the chaos. The experienced centurions bellow themselves hoarse, attempting to maintain the dwindling line as the Caledonian warriors press ever closer, their painted bodies flashing through the smoke and rain. It is here, in this sodden, desperate stand, that the fate of the Ninth is sealed. Their line breaks, the formation dissolves, and the hope of orderly retreat vanishes into the mud and mist. In the quiet corridors of York, once Eboracum, the shadow of the vanished Ninth lingers, etched into the very stones that once bore their footsteps. Centuries after the Legion's disappearance, a battered tile inscribed with LEGIX stands testament to hands that shaped clay and pressed symbols into wet earth, their work now a fragment of Rome's lost presence. Local memory, passed through generations of Britons and later chroniclers, murmured of a mighty cohort swallowed by the mists beyond the wall, soldiers whose red-crested helmets and battered lorica segmentata sparked tales around firesides. Monks at Lindisfarne, copying ancient chronicles, paused to debate the empty entries where the Ninth once stood proud in military roles, their quills spattering ink as they speculated. Did the Legion perish fighting the fierce Caledonian tribes, or vanish into the forests, never to send word back to Rome? Roman mothers in Eboracum pressed tokens into the hands of priests, praying for absent sons as the city's garrison thinned. The worn milestones along Dare Street bore silent witness, guiding the footsteps of later legions and travelers over routes once patrolled by men whose fate had become rumor. In the camps of the northern frontier, centurions recounted the last mustering of the Ninth, their voices hushed, some recalling the banner's sudden absence, others whispering of an ambush beyond the rivers, where the heather concealed more than secrets. Even in distant Rome, the Senate received no certainties, only the silence of dispatches lost at the edge of the known world. The physical details endure, the leaden sling bullets stamped with LEGIX, unearthed by plowmen near the Tyne, the shattered altar stones left in abandoned forts, the faded graffiti scratched into barracks' wall. Felix of the Ninth was here. In these fragments, in the absence of certainty, the memory of the Ninth lived on, not in triumphs carved on marble, but in the wary glance of a sentry at dusk, or the half-told tales of legionaries' last stand on the frontier, their bodies unclaimed by Rome, their legacy woven into the uneasy peace that settled like mist over the land.